we learn to share something and then listen, and then share something and then listen. And when we do that, we build this amazing connection with our audience. And even the beauty of this is this conversation is relevant long before someone is ready to get on Google and buy. They don't have to be ready to buy. They don't even have to be looking for a new vendor. Everyone who is a potential client, everyone who can benefit from this has a reason to listen and plug in, which means when it comes time to make decisions, you become the obvious choice.
Hey guys, this is Ryan jumping in real quick, just letting you know that this is the second part of a two-part conversation that Brad and I had. You can actually catch the first half in the previous episode. I'll throw a link in at the top of the screen so you can follow that if you missed it. Otherwise, hope you enjoy.
Now, the 5 levers, I designed them in a way that at the absolute, if you don't want to think about it and you're not doing any of them yet, start with one and move chronologically. You can also, many businesses have pulled different combinations of levers at the same time. They might even skip one and do 3 and 4, or 3 and 5, or 1 and 2 and 4. That's okay. There's not a right or wrong answer. But if you are like, you're coming to this and you're like, can you give me the easy button? Just start with one.
Right. Yeah.
That's it in a nutshell. So the first lever is called the connector. And that's the identity, right? So we have an identity attached to each lever because I thought that felt best, right? Like, what's the identity? The identity is connector. And the idea is, how do I leverage social media and the digital world to do a couple of things? 1, get to know my customer. 2, build a larger network. And 3, create an audience so that when I do start delivering content, there's someone there to watch it. So that we don't have the website video that doesn't get any views, right?
Right. You've got to figure out where your customers are for like that. Step 1 is figure out where they are.
The goal is like, you don't have to have tons of views, but if you build a community, right? If you tap in, not really building, you're tapping into a community, and you go out and make 500 connections of people who are in that network, right? They're adjacent companies, they're other vendors, they're potential customers, they're past customers, they're people that you've known in your professional life, they're people you go to as a vendor, right? Not just people that serve your clients as a vendor, and you go build that little network. Then when you make the piece of content, all the right people see. Right? You don't need a million people on YouTube, right? Like, this is the anecdote to not being the YouTube stars. You go build your little community, you build a room, and then so when it does come time for you to put content in front of them to help them, you have the right eyeballs on it. And the cool thing is, if we use a network like LinkedIn, we can do that in a very specific way. All of us, go to your salesperson, go to the CEO, they've got a list of people they'd like to do business with. They know, I guarantee you there's a list of 50 companies that they'd like to do business with. All of them have. All of them have a target list, a hit list. The thing is, are we communicating to that outside of the cold phone calls? Outside of the trade show handshakes? Are we doing it all this way? So level 1 is all about that. While you're doing it, you also are getting to know how people are communicating. Like, they're raising their hand. They're saying, hey, I'm having this problem, or I'm having this success, or this is a really cool thing, or this is a really lame thing. And you're downloading all this information about what's going on, which allows you to get in the conversation. When they're like, hey, so-and-so and such and such happened. And then you can come in, because we have this beautiful thing called the comments section, and you can comment on it. So imagine your client makes a piece of content. They're not doing level 1, right? Somebody at the company said, we just got to make some content. And they make a piece of content, and they're really hoping it's going to work, right? What do they want? They want someone to comment on it.
Yeah.
They want someone to interact with it. So then you go in and you be that person. and you say, hey, I noticed that you said in here such and such. That was a really good point. Have you considered this? Oh,
Mhm.
awesome. It was really awesome seeing your content. That comment is like, it's like you did something for them, right? Because that's what they want more than anything is somebody to interact with it, to tell the algorithm, to show it to the next person. And if you do that on LinkedIn, it's like you giving a seal of approval on the content because then LinkedIn goes and shows it to your network. And if you've built a network of value, my guess is the network of value that you have also is valuable to your client because oftentimes in B2B, we're all running in the same circle. They're just talking about this in power washing, right? There's not that many companies in these circles, right? And they all,
Right.
most of them in the business to business part, in the vendor space, are doing business with other vendors in different ways, right? They have strategic partners who provide parts or products or logistics or whatever, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you're helping each other. And so this is 3 C's, right? It's consume. You've got to read and watch. You got to connect. You got to find the right people, make the connection to them. And 3, you got to contribute, make the comment, share the post, do the thing. And this builds that foundation. Now, the cool thing is I've done this so many times and it creates clients. It actually creates clients because we're doing online sales and we're not doing it in an annoying way.
Right.
So this creates a connection, and maybe it's a connection with a strategic partner. And that strategic partner, we talk in, and they refer me to a client. But all because we went through this process. And so we want to build a cadence. This is like that daily practice. And the more people in your business that do it, the more results it gets. So that wasn't I didn't breathe as fast because I get excited. Not it.
So then, yeah, what's next after that? So you
lever 2,
you've connected. Yeah. What's next?
Lever 2, the natural follow-up is if I have a group of people, I'm commenting on their stuff. We're doing this thing, right? This natural networking, connecting, we're being relational online, right? Social media, we're being social, is that we start to create content. And the easiest place to create content is from our own expertise. And I call this the expert.
Mm-hmm.
And so it is basically, we're going to unlock the power of content by sharing the expertise that we carry with the people who benefit from it. In most of our businesses, it's our expertise the clients are buying or is helping them in one way or another. Now, we may be a logistics company, but I guarantee you, even if you're selling logistics, selling moving things from point A to point B, I did an interview that's coming out soon with a guy that does freight. He's a freight broker.
Mm-hmm.
And he's got a really cool platform that brings that down to a user-friendly thing that doesn't require you to call your broker. You can go get instant quotes across a whole bunch of shippers, right? Because, the shipping networks it's a mess, right? Like there's a lot of different shippers. And so it's like, well, no, he's selling a logistical platform, but I guarantee you that somebody's calling a salesman at that company over and over and over again and asking the same 10 questions. Hey, how does this work? Hey, what can I do about that? Hey, what do you know about this? Or how does this work? Or what's this thing here, right? You can answer those questions in content. And if you've already connected to the right people, you're creating help for them, right? It becomes your market material. And so, the trick is to think about the questions across the spectrum of the journey that they're on. And again, that's definitely one we have to dive into deeper. But I like the overlay client journey with our expert help, right? It's like the world as it is today has these questions and these problems. How do we bring that to them in content? And this is not a exciting form of content, but if you're not utilizing it, you're really missing out.
Yeah, that is where I have landed the last 3 or 4 years, was in this without even knowing it as the helpful expert, right? That was where I felt comfortable. It was easy to make content because I didn't have to try and be super creative. It was, hey, let me just share the knowledge that I know. And I saw a ton of benefit from it. And so, so moving to the next lever, then what would have been if I would have stayed the course? Like, where would I have gone from there? What's letter 3? What would have been the next progression of how I can better serve my potential customers?
So great leaders take this information that they're getting, right? So they're talking to their clients. they're networking online, they're answering, they're getting the questions and the problems, and they're solving them, right? And because as a leader of a company, I have to have a vision. As a visionary leader, I start to develop a point of view, right? The world is like this. This is how people have been doing it. But if we could make a few changes, the world could be here. And I think it's really more like the world is like this today. And if we made a few changes, it could be like this. And so we call this level the evangelist. It's once you've developed a point of view, a unique point of view, built on your experience, built on new ways to solve the problems of your customers, you start to develop this, like, this is the change I want to create. You know, and one of my favorites to talk about is Mike McAllowitz, and he's written a bunch of books, right? And he's created this point of view, and it is to end entrepreneurial poverty, which is, to a lot of people, a shock if you're not already an entrepreneur, to realize that entrepreneurs only make on average 60% of the equivalent job if they were to go work for another company. And he wants to end that. And that becomes a point of view. And now I'm evangelizing a message. I want entrepreneurial poverty to be over. For me, I want for people to unlock the power in relationships so that when they make strategy, they get above the trend. As I came up with this recently, and it's like, I don't know that I like the alliteration or not, but transcending the trend, right? When we focus on relationships, our strategies transcend trends, right? I want people to not be captive to, like, well, I think right now such and such is popular, so we need to do that.
Right.
That's a really tough way to operate. But if we think this way, then all of a sudden we have that clear vision, that clear frame to make better strategic decisions with what's going on the board. And we know what trends to take advantage of, which ones to stay away from, what problems to solve, what things are just distractions. So, go ahead.
I was to say, yeah, and it's certainly a lot less exhausting too. You're not trying to keep up with every single trend that comes and goes. And hey, the market's going this way. Let's do that. Let's go this way. Let's do that. Instead, you're creating the trend yourself.
You're creating the one that's relevant to your audience, to your work, that's inside of the things that are solving the problem, right? So there's a framework in the book, and we'll talk about this in a future episode, that breaks down that high level, right? Like, end entrepreneurial poverty, really big thing, right? Like, use relationships to transcend a trend. Well, that's a pretty broad thing to say, Brad. I mean, how do I do that? There is a framework to break that down, layer by layer, peeling that onion back till we get all the way down to some really specific things. And so then that becomes this frame of all the things that we evangelize in our content. And when we do it right, we're not, like, right now I'm speaking at the audience, right? I mean, I'm talking to you. I might be talking at you. But
how about the I can't think of the word, the stand-in for the audience, whatever that word.
But instead of talking, like, you know, when I was doing a presentation last week, and I was talking at the audience most of it, right? But at the end, we all sat down, and I came down and sat in a chair, and we had a conversation. The magic, and I hate that word, but the magic happens when your content and that point of view that you've developed is something that happens in conversation with your audience, and then they give you feedback, and you continue to refine it. And they give you feedback, and you continue to refine it. I think about Mike McAllowitz, right? Like, you know, he went through this evolution. Like, the first major book that he had success with was Profit First. It was all about a new accounting system and how we do profit. But over time, in that conversation that he's been having with entrepreneurs, he's like, oh, systems are a problem. So he came up with a book called Clockwork. Oh, people don't know what problems to address in their business. So he came up with Fix This Next. Oh, even after all this, people are still struggling with marketing. So he came up with Get Different. And I'm not saying that those are they're not the be all end all answers. I mean, I love Mike, but my point is it was that ongoing conversation, and his point of view, what he was evangelizing, continued to evolve and grow. And that's what you really want, because that's what's going to make the best connection and build the deepest relationships with the people. And we call this activity, levels 2 and 3, as when you learn how to create demand. And we call it the art of creating demand, because it's not a science. I mean, we should approach it scientifically, but what it is, it's a conversation, and conversation's an art form, right? And we learn to share something and then listen, and then share something and then listen. And when we do that, we build this amazing connection with our audience. And even the beauty of this is this conversation is relevant long before someone is ready to get on Google and buy. They don't have to be ready to buy. They don't even have to be looking for a new vendor. Everyone who is a potential client, everyone who can benefit from this has a reason to listen and plug in, which means when it comes time to make decisions, you become the obvious choice. So we never have to sell to anybody. We help people. We share with people. We make relationships with people. And then they do business with us as a default, which is the way the world has always worked and will continue to always work in the future. We're just bringing it into marketing. Instead of saying, all right, if we run this ad and then we retarget with this ad and then we hit them with this thing over here and then we send them like 42 emails over here and then we start picking up the phone and calling them, at some point we're going to annoy them and they're just going to be like, I'm going to buy whatever so you stop calling me, which doesn't really work. But that's kind of what's happening, right? Like we're saying, no, what people really want is for you to help them with their problems. What people really want is to have somebody that they can turn to that has the answers to the questions they're asking. You're just putting yourself in that space.
Well, what's next?
The next part is exciting. The next part is what we think of when we think of advertising. And I call it the producer, but it's when we apply scale. So when this thing's working, right? Like I know the message works. I know what I'm saying works. People are saying, this is amazing. Tell me more. And you're like, okay, now it's time to get that in front of everyone. And then we can use several methods to do that, right? There's 5 methods of scale. We're running so long in this, I'm not going to talk about them. So you have to do it or buy the book or whatever.
Yeah.
But there's several methods of scale that we can do to turn the volume up. This is like when you know something works and you press the throttle down, right, on the plane. Or for me, it's like pedal to the metal, but you can't see my foot. So this is when you turn the throttle up. We call this the producer, because a lot of the methods of scale are actually learning to be a production machine to get your message to more places. But they can also be ads. They can also be ads.
And then last after that, what's the last thing?
I know this already. Like I want to stop saying this. If anybody's watched this at 52 minutes, I'll get it.
Maybe I'll break it into 2 different.
Fine is sitting here thinking, Brad, we're doing this recording because we needed to keep it short, and you're taking an hour to go through this.
No, it's good. Maybe, like I said, maybe I'll break this into 2 separate shows.
3 or 4 or 6, whatever. The last one is the one that's the most exciting. Like I love levels 1 and 5, or levers 1 and 5. And I did switch that. So if you're listening to this, I should be transparent. This was originally levels, but then I realized it wasn't levels, because sometimes people just hit 3 or they just hit 5. There's people that just hit 5 and they never figure any of the rest of it out, but they're so good at 5, they never have to.
Yeah.
So lever 4 is all about like, I'm putting fuel in the fire. I've got the can of gas. So this is the third analogy for lever 4 that we're using. I've got the can of gas and I'm pouring it on the fire to make the fire bigger, right? But there's a lever, there's a world where other people bring the gas. It's like you host the bonfire, they bring the gas. And that's when things get really exciting. So we call this the visionary. But what it is about community. And so when we tap into other people's communities, when we join forces with communities, when we build communities around our products, around our ideas, when we create rooms where people gather and exchange value, something truly special happens. And that's what lever 5 is all about. It's the hardest one to create. All the others, I can give you the steps 1, 2, 3, 4 to create it. 5, I don't know. Some people have it, some people don't. Some people create the environment and then it starts to just happen in it. And I think you can foster it, but you can't fake it. And community, and I want to say this, I put this in the book, but in case you never read the book, not you, but the person it is. Community is not a Facebook group. Now, a community can exist in a Facebook group because that's a place they can gather. But just because you have a Facebook group with 10,000 people on it, or 100,000 people for that matter, does not mean you have a community. A community rallies around something. Shared value, the value brought by the leader, safety, belongingness, they're rallying around something. So when I see Facebook groups that are really just filled with people throwing stones at each other and being cruel and unkind, and use it as a place to beat on their chest and hide behind their keyboards and live in this place of ego, that's not what a community is about. Community is when we're on the page together, and they can exist in many forms. The coolest community, the most prevalent community that everyone knows, but it operates in this, and it doesn't operate in a place, it operates everywhere. I think of like Apple. People wear their Apple Watch like it is a badge of honor. They flip up. No one puts covers on the Apple computer, right? Like, you want to see that Apple light up. I'm going to sit in public. I'm going to turn my computer so you know I use a Mac, right? I'm an iPhone user. That's an identity. When you turn your product or your service into an identity, you have a community, right? Like, that's a powerful form of community.
Yeah, you know, I've talked to, I forget if this was on one of their shows or when you and I talked about this, but like Apple, it even goes as far as the people who don't use Apple products are identifying their community still based on Apple, because they're not hey, we're not a Samsung.
I'm not an Apple user. I don't.
Yeah, that's how like invasive Apple is in like society is. It's not. I'm a Galaxy user. I'm not an Apple. I'm staking my claim that I'm not an Apple guy. And so, but in the end, it's like, no, you're still basing your identity on Apple.
When doing business with you becomes something that says something about who the customer is, right? When I buy an Apple product, right? When I'm a Mac user, I believe as a Mac user that says something about who I am. When people start attaching what you offer to their identity, get out of the way. It don't even matter what you say anymore. It's what they say. And then when they say it, they become evangelists because they are talking to their friend and their excitement, right? And people are like, I want to identify with that. I'm doing that too. I want to be a part of that club. And so it starts to spread. It has nothing to do with your advertising or your marketing or anything you are doing. It has to do with what your community is doing. But the thing is, we can tap into that as business. We can tap into all these things. And so, you know, the 5 levers is a timeless strategy. Today, in the book, we get down to the nitty-gritty, right? We're talking about the contents, and we're talking about the platforms that exist in the time the book is written. But if you set yourself up with the right frames, those levers will exist no matter what platform you use, what channel you use, what piece of technology you use. They're always going to exist in what we do. And once you know them and you know how to interact with your people, you'll just apply the right tactic into the place, right? You'll just you'll just place it in. You'll know whatever comes after email, right? Whatever comes after social media, whatever comes after video, whatever comes next, whatever the next technology is, as a business, you'll say, hey, I know my people. I know where they're at. I know what they need. I'm just going to take this one out and plug this one in.
So I'm going to go ahead and assume I'm going to cut this into 2 episodes. So I have one more question because I think this may be a long answer also. So for the people hearing,
not nice for you to say.
So for whoever happens to have made it this far and is listening to this, like whether, let's say someone's sitting down and they say, hey, Brad, I am this role in my company. Is this something I can implement? Like, is this let's talk about the 5 levers. Is that like, whose job is it in a company to implement that? Is that the CEO? Is that the marketing, the head of marketing, or is that the sales guy? Or is the sales guy saying, hey, I hear what you're saying. I believe all this stuff. I think it'd be great for us, but you know what? I'm the sales guy. Like, how do I implement this in our company when I'm not in charge of the direction of the company? I'm in charge of sales. Like, whose responsibility is it at the end of the day to introduce this into their company, or push through it, or say, hey, here's what we're doing, here's how we should do where does that in reality line up with who should be directing this conversation in the company?
The day a company grows big enough to have those three positions occupied by three people, when there is a CEO being a CEO, a marketer being a marketer, and a salesperson being a salesperson, and it's three actual individual people, not the CEO just wearing all the hats. Three different perspectives, three different points of view will develop. And because of the influence of the world around us, and because of the responsibilities that they carry in the company, they're likely going to naturally develop differently. And so the responsibility is on all their heads, but it's not to get the job done. It's to get themselves rowing in the same direction as their counterparts. As the CEO, they're often kind of stuck in the middle, right? Probably what grew their business is something that's old school compared to whatever's the new thing, right? They probably had some older techniques that they used. They're also probably the kind of people that get excited about new things. But being that they're responsible for the company cash flowing every month and making payroll and making rent payments and paying their vendors, they have some stresses for today. You know, they need sales. They need people to close today. They need accounts to pay today, right? That's always on their shoulders. And so they get caught in the middle. The salespeople often, in this B2B say, they're often, it's an older group that's been kind of taught old school ways, right? As a general rule. And I've been around the salespeople I've been around in B2B, and excuse me if you're not this way, because I know there's a ton who are. They're the ones that like throw the rocks at the new idea. They're like, that'll never work. Our people don't like that. That's what I've heard. And the marketer is a person who has probably the newest and freshest ideas with their ear on the ground, but probably doesn't understand their counterparts, doesn't understand the weight on the CEO's shoulders, doesn't understand that an entire career has been built around doing it different than the salesperson. And I think we have this lack of relational understanding. And this is the last place the connection and relationship really, this is where it ties full circle, is that we have to start taking the time to understand each other and figuring out how we get on the same page. If you want any of this stuff to work, it's going to take perseverance. I did an interview with a client earlier this week, and I said, Matt, number one trait. You're talking to, he's got a nephew who started a pressure washing business. So what's the number one thing you tell him? He's 21 years old, 22 years old, starting a business. What does he need to get to where you're at? Said, grit.
Yeah.
And to see a successful change in your marketing, to implement a new program, you need a tremendous amount of perseverance and grit, because there's a good chance you're going to try stuff that isn't going to work the first time. And you're going to have to be committed. You're going to have to be like, I know this can work. So how do we tweak it? How do we try the next thing? Because we're all on the same page here to making it work. What part, as a salesperson, what part can I do to help it make it work? As a marketer, it's like, how can I respect your time, the salesperson? How can I respect your time as a CEO and extract all this experience and knowledge that you have and bring it into what we're doing in marketing? And as a CEO, it's saying, all right, guys, we have to balance here. We have to make the bills this month. We have to keep the cash flow coming. But I also know the best time to plant an oak tree was 60 years ago, and the second best time is today. So we want to plant the oak tree. So I know that I have to start doing things today that are going to pay off in 9 months and 12 months and 18 months from now. and I have to balance it. And I want to help you guys do that. We have to develop empathy for this whole thing. Otherwise, it won't work, because best fundamentals, right? Best who, best product, best strategies. You get to the point, if these three people are doing this over it and they're whispering behind each other's back, it ain't gonna work.
Yeah.
So it's really about alignment. And I think that that's something that everybody faces. I'm not an expert in it. I just recognize it. When I worked with companies, when I've been in companies, it always exists, right? As soon as one person leaves the conversation, the other two are like, well, they did such and such, and they're always off over here doing this and thinking that and saying this. And it's like, we can't operate that way when we're trying to affect change.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't want to be the preacher. Like, that's a lie. I don't want to be the person trying to stand on my high horse, telling other people how to be. But I also desperately want companies, leaders who are providing value, who really are on a mission to do something worthwhile, to not get stuck in something that has nothing to do with the marketing at all. So we have to say it. We have to throw it in there. In the book, in fact, at the end of each chapter, I actually write a short letter to each of the three positions to remind them, what could you do with this piece to make it successful? Because it's going to take all of you. So that means every company is about 3 copies.
Yeah, as I say, so as a sales guy, buy the book and maybe just leave it on the CEO's desk when he's not in there, and walk out.
Exactly. Give it to your marketer too, because your marketer may be lost in the data analytics marketing. They may be like, hey, we're getting so many thousand views on the social media, and we made 18 blogs this month. We have AI. We're doing blogs every day, and that's not what it's about. It's not what it's about. Do you know who else is doing that? Everyone. Do you know who has access to Chat GPT? Everyone. That's not going to be the thing that saves you. Yeah, tools are great. Get more efficient. Don't get left behind. Don't put your head in the sand. But it's something bigger. It's something more fundamental around people making decisions, working together, solving problems, that's going to make the difference. And that's true in marketing. It's true in business. It's true in life.
Yeah, I agree. I think if that wasn't the case, then people would hate going into like small privately owned stores, right? But that's like the best shopping experience for anyone who still goes to actual like brick and mortar stores. Like, you still want to go into the mom and pop store because you get the relationship. And yeah, if you ignore that side of it, then you just can't. Like, you can't escape the fact that they can still exist because of the relationships they build with their customers.
I love going to the hardware store and getting a bag of popcorn. That's something you can't do at Walmart. I read Sam Walton's book recently, and he talked about, he said, so many small town businesses, so many writers have said, we're destroying small town business. He said, here's what I'm going to tell you. He said, there's always a niche that you can fill. The question is, do you want to fill it? He said, here's what I can't do at Walmart. He said, I try every day to give the small town individual service in my store. He said, but we can't do it like you can. He said, I can't give the one-off boutique store feel and service in my Walmart. And if you figure out how to do that, you can exist in the same town as me, because I can't do it. I can't even compete with you on it.
Yeah.
And that's the thing. We've got to find that. And I think what we've seen in like the evolution of retail is, as downtowns are revitalizing across the United States, right? Like, I just moved to a really tiny town, and it's in the process of being revitalized. And you see that even though there's a Walmart 15 minutes away or whatever, people love going into a store where the shopkeep knows their name, knows their order, stops what they're doing. Like, there's a hardware store in town, and you're like, they stop what they're doing and they come help you find the one bolt that you need, right?
Yeah.
And they bag it up for you, and they shake your hand, and they smile, and they say thank you. And you can't get that at Lowe's.
Right. Yeah, unless the salesperson at Lowe's has read the book. How about that?
No comment.
Yeah, no, I think it's certainly a conversation that we should dive deeper into also kind of breaking down each lever. And maybe that's an episode for the future, is each lever kind of having its own episode. But I think the important thing in that you and I agree on, and that I hear you saying throughout this whole thing, is that everything depends on the relationships. You can have the best product in the world. You can have the most ads, the highest SEO. Your website can pop up at the top of every single Google search, but that doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to have sales. And you may have some sales. You can certainly get sales out of having your ad at the top, but for the most part, I know for me personally, if I'm looking for a plumber or we just had somebody come out, and we had a bunch of wasps that got into our inside our walls. And when I search for local pest control, whatever, near me on Google, the first three, you see the little like word ad. I'm like, okay, skip. Like those three are at the top of the list, but I am skipping those three because what I know is somebody paid to get there instead of someone getting there organically through reviews or through what the community has said about their website or the traffic that their website's getting. And I don't want to see the ads. I don't want to see the ad companies. I want to see who is organically getting there. And then I called the company, and it's not Terminex, it's not Orkin. It was called Rambo Pest Control. And shout out to Rambo Pest Control. Like, I called them and they answered the phone, and the guy talked me through it, and he gave me the options. He came out, he's like, hey, we'll come out and we'll take a look at it for free, and we'll let you know what it would cost to take care of it. And the guy came out super friendly. Like, my daughter, our 3-year-old daughter, was out there with me, and he was talking to her, and like everything about the experience was relational. And at the end, he got to the price, and I was like, yeah, absolutely, let's do it. Let's get him sprayed today. And then I trusted that if there was an issue, or if, hey, after he sprays, if I still feel like there's wasps, I can call the technician's cell phone number. He gave me his cell phone number, and he'll come back out the next day, and he'll take care of it again, and he'll respray it, or he'll take care of the problem, because the entire process was built on a relationship, and built on being personable, and built on being not a Google ad that I was calling.
It's powerful. It's so powerful. And my belief is that that's still how people want to be treated, that's still the experience someone wants to go through, whether they're buying a home service for their family, or they're buying a product for a company they represent.
Mm-hmm.
That's my belief. And I think that the interesting thing is if they did a great job and you're happy with it, how likely are you to tell someone else when they need someone to spray for wasps, which probably other people in your neighborhood do.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And that's the part of marketing that we can't forget. It's not, should we have word of mouth, or should we have paid ads, or should we have organic content? Those are the wrong questions. You know, the right question is, when we build it on the right foundation, we can have all of them.
Mm-hmm.
They can all build on each other. They can all complement each other, right? Like, I want my customers shouting at the top of the hills about my service. I want the content that I do to only add fuel to that fire. You know, I don't want to choose. I'm not here to advocate one or the other. I'm here to say that, like, there is a method that you can have all of it. You can have your cake and eat it too.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So, and I think this is exciting, right? I appreciate the conversation. I appreciate you being patient. I'm very passionate about these things.
Yeah, no, it's a good thing.
Because I believe they can affect change. And that's what I want to do. You've heard my lever 3. You know, this is lever 3. What's lever 3? This is lever 3.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I'm doing today. And this whole book, the message, the reason we make this content is because I want everyone to have the information. I don't want to hoard this. I can only work with so many clients. I mean, we got told the other day, we're a boutique marketing company. You know, we work deeply with clients. It means that, like, every business can't do business with us at the same time. We only work with so many businesses. right? We can only onboard a couple of businesses even in a month. But I want to help all the businesses. And that's why we're doing the book. That's why we make the content, is because I want people to get a new frame and experiences. And if they have a great product and they're building great relationships, I want them to get all the benefit. And then tell us about it. That'd be the biggest win in the world for me. So, that's what it's here for. I look forward to hearing people's feedback. I look forward to having more conversations with you about it, diving deeper into some of them. We're going to give a master class on all of them. There's no proprietary information. We work with people because we're being advisors, or we're locking arms with our clients. That's how we work with them. We're locking arms and saying, here's the mission, let's go do it together.
Yeah.
Here's the mission, I'm handing, here's the battle plan. Let's get to it. I want to see your results. So thanks, Ryan. I appreciate it. Yeah. Let's wrap it there.
Yeah, sounds good. Yeah, we'll certainly dive into it deeper at another time. I see this as an hour and 15 minutes, so I absolutely am going to divide this into two different. I'll find a good breaking point where we can split. And yeah, I'm looking forward to continuing the conversation.
Awesome, man. Well, thank you guys. Thank you for watching. If you're watching at the end of this, you're amazing. You are my new friend. Feel free to message us, reach out to us directly, ask the questions. You can drop them in the comments. You can reach out to us directly. We would love to continue this conversation in the future. So thanks, guys. Bye.